Well, welcome to another episode of the Scrumdown. My name is Skulk and I am joined again by Peter van Ooselen, our Sports One news anchor and fellow rugby nerd. Peter, welcome to the show.
I'm not a fellow rugby nerd. You're the rugby nerd. I'm not the rugby nerd.
Well, just because of the glasses, right? Right, guys, so today we're going to talk everything about round 4 of the URC. We're also going to be having a look at the New Zealand tours to South Africa, which has been announced for 2026. And then we're going to wrap everything up with a bit more of the fun side of rugby. So I think let's get into it. So Peter, we had URC round 4 completing last weekend. South African teams, a bit of a mixed bag. We had 2 wins, 2 losses on the road. All teams facing that European weather. Let's quickly have a look firstly at the Sharks versus Benetton game. That's I think a game that the Sharks probably want to forget sooner than later.
Not a great performance. They're now languishing near the bottom of the log. They've got a lot of soul searching to do. It seems.
A lot of soul searching. I think you can also see, I think definitely the tour is getting the better of them. It was third week on tour, but really just looked disorganized. Considering a team with so much depth and so many key players and big names, it's actually a little bit disappointed to see that it's actually not really gelling at this stage.
Benetton are a good side. They know how to play well at home, and they're clearly on top of their game.
Give credit. I think it's always tricky for our South African teams, especially Italy. It's been proven quite tough, and I think it's just a little bit of a different environment that you do play in. The stadium is also smaller, but you do find that the crowd is right on there, and they get quite rowdy, and I do think it's a little bit more hostile than one would think. So. So that's Sharks really having a tough day, going down 38-10. It looks a little bit flattering because they only scored off the red buzzer already went off. So in extra time managed to get 1 try over the line. But some soul searching for Plumtree and his team, unfortunately.
But let's talk about our Lions. Come on, man. The Lions are looking good. They're looking good. Still another match away this week, is that right?
So they've still
on the road.
On the road for another
but
2
they're looking good.
weeks.
We've chatted briefly off air about it. They travel well.
So the Lions face the Dragons in Wales. We suspect it's going to be a wet game, which it was. And also the thing is they play on that synthetic surfaces. So you can see the Lions' intent was there. They wanted to be playing expansive rugby. They wanted to keep things going, but it was quite tough. So a game where we see a lot of swift switches in play, where the Lions were dominating in the beginning, then the Dragons came back, especially after the intercept try. It was really a ping pong. Even by half time, the Lions managed to get 3 over just to lead half time, and battled out right at the end. So
but the Bulls, I do want to talk about the Bulls. Obviously, that incident in the last, I don't know, was it last 15, 20 minutes? The red card. I think we've got, we saw it on social media. For me, it was a 50-50 call. He was going in with his arm. It was a bit high. But what did it warrant a red card? Well, that's...
so you're referring to Creel there, and I think obviously he was attacking. He obviously mistimed that impact totally because he was overstretching. I think the defender did slow down a little bit in that contact situation, and he just totally mistimed it. A little bit unfortunate. Red card, I think the South African public might reckon it was a bit harsh though.
But it wasn't called on the field at the time, as I understand it. I didn't actually see it. But then the crowd saw it on the big screen, and they kind of thought, it should be and then the ref kind of changed the decision. Would that be a fair way to sum the incident up?
We actually see this quite happening a lot. With red card offences, and then where a try was not supposed to be a try, where
yellow card.
It was actually a try was awarded, and then you see the crowd going all around. The ref looks up at the screen like, oh goodness, let me just have another look. In some cases, and especially in the international games, you do see that the TMOs tend to then kind of call it, and they'll notify the referee of any infringements. But it's my understanding that you have time up to the kicker as you take the kick to post to still make that call and turn over. After the kick has been completed, thereafter, yes. you can't really go back and review any decisions that was made.
So is that the cut-off time? If the kick goes, because obviously a penalty.
In some cases, if the referee's been notified, you'll see that the TMO will say, "Whoa, hold on," actually pause the kicker.
But that's always on the back of the crowd making a big song and dance about it.
Well, you know what, that's the advantage playing at home, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But it's, you know what, the technology's there, and I think, we need to kind of embrace.
And they held on nonetheless. I mean, as you said, they were down to about 12 men at the end.
Yeah, but
they
listen,
were
I
able to hold
give credit to the Lions. They still, you can see the intent is there. They're still trying to play. One thing that kind of was a bit baffling was they did do a lot of kicking right down the middle of the pitch. I would imagine they wanted to then have the Dragons making the mistakes on their end. But still, you can see it was a good game to watch, considering that it was such a wet weather, and it was quite brutal front, which I enjoyed.
What we are hearing is that Jake White is going to be appealing the red card. What are the chances? I mean, take us through the process, the disciplinary process. What are the chances of it actually being overturned?
Oh, you're referring to the Creel?
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's always mitigating factors. So after red card was awarded, then there's usually a disciplinary, like you say, committee that would be neutral within the URC. They will then come back and say, okay, listen, it was justifiable, the punishment was served on the pitch. It might also be the case where they say, listen, it was such infringement that, yes, you might see a few weeks being banned. It was a high degree of danger. So obviously,
how do you see this one going?
I think it's a bit of a tough call. I think because there is some, I don't think it's going to go beyond a red card, personally. I think we'll see that they'll come and say, listen, it was malicious, but not intentionally in such a case where it was more a mistiming of that impact collision situation.
I do understand, though, that you will miss next week. That's, I think, part of the red card.
Yeah, so that is usually, unless, like in this case, Jake White is appealing, you might see that actually overruled and say, listen, play on. The thing is, this stage, Jake White don't want to lose any players because they are on tour still and you have your squad. And listen, Creel has been showing fantastic season. He's definitely on the Bok radar as well. So, definitely not a player he wants to miss on tour at this stage.
I mean, how often are these kind of things overturned, if ever?
If there's good arguments, listen, they go according to the book, so they'll obviously state the case and they'll go through. It's a bit of academic side, I would imagine. Say, listen, no, the rule apply, and this is how we apply the rules. We've seen this also in the Rugby World Cup with that red card. Even though the referee afterwards admitted, like, gosh, we can't, for the sake of the game, we can't have a red card. But the rule states that's a high degree impact. That was captain on captain, that impact, and the All Black captain saw red. So unfortunately, that was. So you see that, and that's obviously having an impact on the game going forward as well.
All right. What else are we chatting
so
about?
I think, let's have a chat about the Stormers, because they were up against Edinburgh. Now remember, Edinburgh came back from South Africa having a terrible tour, losing quite badly against the Bulls and the Lions. Now they're back at home in Edinburgh in Scotland, and you really see this just outrunning the poor Stormers, which is actually quite disappointing. Stormers, since the URC started, has been a force to be reckoned with, but this season they're really just not firing on all cylinders at this stage. You see also the Edinburgh being quite quick out of the blocks, and I think they really wanted to make that statement and say, listen, we know we had a bad tour, we need to come back, and that's exactly what they did at the end of the day. So to a point where, there was no turn back for the Stormers. Stormers did try to fight back. Listen, they had many opportunities. One need to say also where they just couldn't convert. Yet again, not sure if 3 weeks on the tour is catching up on them. Not too sure.
They're up against Munster this weekend. Munster also played 4-1-2, lost 2, so they're also 50-50. But the Stormers need to get it right.
But the Stormers is going to be back at home in Cape Town, and you'll see a different Stormers. You'll have that Cape Town crowd coming out, quite in numbers usually. Hopefully they still come out after the Stormers not been performing, but we'll see some quite differences there. So I think let's quickly have a look at the log at this stage. So after round 4, we actually see that Leinster is still leading the pack. They had a fantastic win over Munster. That was definitely the game of the weekend. Then we see Glasgow Warriors, which is the defending champion, still quite nicely positioned. But I think as a South African supporter, you see the Emirate Lions and Vodacom Bulls, 2 unbeaten teams. The only other unbeaten team is Leinster, which is positioning them quite well. If they can just keep on performing on this tour, I think we'll definitely see them in the top 8 going forward.
See, the Lions and the Bulls have a game in hand.
all the South African teams
yeah.
would have, because of we actually started a week later due to the conflict in the Currie Cup fixtures. And then unfortunately, right at the bottom, we see the Stormers, won from 3 games. A lot of catching up to do, but not impossible. We've seen it's a long season still. Benefit for Stormers is they do have a lot of depth in their squad. So we'll actually see them rotating some squads as they get back home, and we'll see them coming through. The Sharks, unfortunately, also in 14th position, also 1 from 3 games. Not where they want to be, but they're also back home next week. So let's talk about the games coming up for this weekend. So we see Lions traveling to Italy for Zebre. Sharks going down to Scotland. Sharks hosting the Warriors in Durban, as we said, and then that big game, Stormers against Munster. That should be a fantastic game down in Cape Town. And then not forget about the Bulls, who's away against Scarlets in Wales, and that's going to be on Friday. Okay. So a lot to walk forward to, a lot of drama, a lot of action. But I think before we get into URC, Peter, I think let's quickly talk about the announcement that the all traditional tours are coming back to South Africa. So there's agreement being reached between SARFU, or South Africa Rugby Union, as well as New Zealand Rugby, and they can introduce from 2026 the old school traditional tours coming. So basically what this means is that you have, similar to your Lions tours in the past, well, not in the past, as the Lions tour format is, that you see the touring team playing at least 3 test matches.
We've got to have a minimum of 3 test matches.
And then in between that, you have your midweek games where they will face the URC teams, the Lions, the Stormers, the Bulls, and the Sharks, as well as a South African A team or possibly a development team, which is, if you wind down the clock, that is usually how tours worked. The last tour that we had here was in 1996, where it's All Blacks toured here. So this will also be the 30th anniversary of the last tour to South Africa.
Amazing. I mean, it's a lot of rugby. I mean, back in 1996, you didn't have as much rugby as you do now in terms of URC, Currie Cup. Do you know what I mean? So the midweek teams were up for it. It's a lot of rugby now.
Exactly.
When you include those midweek games.
Yeah. Quite interesting also, the last time that the New Zealand toured here was the first and only time that they actually did win a tour in South Africa, which is quite significant as well, considering, like the history between the 2 teams.
I guess the planning behind it is you've got to bring a lot bigger squad.
Well, that's
you're going to have to almost have 2 full teams traveling.
Which is ideal for any touring squad, because now you can rotate your squad. You'll see a guy playing the Wednesday game for the midweek game, having a blinder, then actually starting for the All Blacks that same weekend still. It gives opportunity for younger players to come through, and for the coaches, this is also quite nice because they now really can test the depth and start introducing new players into the squad. From a marketing point of view, they are looking at branding it as rugby's greatest rivalry, which might be a little bit arrogant, one would say, especially from the Northern Hemisphere. But then you also need to consider, 4 World Cups for South Africa, 3 World Cups for the All Blacks, consistently 1 and 2 in the world, and that's I'm talking about the last 100 odd years. So this I'm personally very excited about. Well, also nice to see to play actually 3 test matches, because when we see tour or teams coming to South Africa, like earlier this year we had Ireland coming in for 2 games. It's fantastic, but now you've got 1 win and 1 loss. Who's the ultimate winner? and it's still not, beginning with Ireland, still not settling the debate who's the better team. With a 3 test match
it's frustrating.
series,
it happens in cricket. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Doesn't make
Either
sense.
have a once-off test or have 3. So run a series and make someone a winner.
That's exactly that. So I think the nice thing about this is now really to say, okay, well, who is the best of the best at that point? But also just from a whole hype. So you'll see this is going to run every 4 years, so similar to the British and Irish Lions. What will, however, impact is going to be the Rugby Championship. So either 1 or 2 scenarios, as this is now reconfirmed, we might see a watered-down Rugby Championship with 1 round only, which might be a bit...
That's what I'm saying, Scott, because the schedule is so pressurised now with URC and everything. I wouldn't like to see the Rugby Championship going... you want one home and away for everybody.
But every 4 years to see a 3-match series against the old foes, I think you need to weigh it up. So I think one of the two, well, that's the one option, to have a watered down rugby championship, or then for Australia and Argentina to form their own competition for those years. You can look at potential bringing in like someone like Japan coming in, maybe some of the northern hemisphere teams joining in and actually having a competition of their own. So there's some of the discussions. I can imagine the Argentinians and Australians are not too happy about this move, but listen, from a spectator point of view, this is going to be, for me personally, the ultimate.
That leads me on to a discussion I want to have with you about Saru.
Yeah.
The scheduling, it's all about the branding.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's news coming in now this week of the potential to try and sell off some of the Springbok brand to international investors, American investors.
Yeah.
The numbers being bandied about, many headlines saying 1.3 billion rand. To buy a percentage of the Springbok brand.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on it? And how do you see it working practically?
I think as a traditionalist, you will be very opposing such move, but wanting to kind of consider that, it's a professional sport these days. If you look at the brand, South African, or the Springbok brand, is such a big brand, not only in South Africa, but globally, it's quite a big brand. What Saru want to do is they want to start, capitalizing on this brand status at the moment, and keeping in mind that apart from the Springboks, they also fund your URC teams and then all the other teams. You look at your Currie Cup teams that not featuring in the URC, anybody from the Pumas to the Boerland and everybody else. It's a big model to fund, and they need to do this funding to make sure that they get great players through the rankings, and then ultimately landing on that level that you want to play for the URC teams, and then ultimately for the Springboks. So we've also seen this move happening with the All Blacks. They did share already, sold some of their shares to American HQ companies. So, I think to remain viable, it seems like that is one of those only options that you have to take.
They do need buy-in from the domestic franchises.
Yeah.
There is talk, though, that we're unsure as to whether they will back the sale or not. Where do you think their heads are at the moment?
Yeah, I think we'll need to see. I think I suspect your bigger franchises would actually push for this. It's going to benefit them in the long run. But unfortunately, I think smaller unions might feel that, listen, they might be undermined. It's really tough to call, Peter. I know, as far as I know, they do some voting later this week. So I think by next week we might even be reporting on that outcome. So I think we'll need to have a look at that.
I do want to touch on it, in terms of the way that the brand works, the Springbok brand. As you say, I think it's at an all-time high at the moment. World Cup victories and successes. I mean, how do you put a figure on that? I mean, how do you?
And it's quite it's quite tough, and it's also, it also fluctuates depending on how the team is performing as a perception. At the moment, the Springbok brand is right up there, back-to-back World Cup winners. Like everything we basically have now won. So it's going to be quite tricky to really put a price tag on that at this stage. But listen, there's some clever people up there, and they are making some big numbers, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the popularity of rugby. It's obviously hugely popular in South Africa, but it's not as popular in Australia, for example. We've got Aussie rules, AFL, all of that. But New Zealand is a small country, so you're looking at television numbers. That's what you're basing this on, and perhaps merchandising. But a number of 1.9 billion rand.
Yeah, that's big, Peter. So I think we'll need to maybe just wait for that outcome, and I think there's a lot more that's going to come from this story after the voting later this week.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. I think that was a lot of serious talk. I think let's quickly talk about the lighter side of things, right? So
sure.
So let's quickly move on to our feature on social media. So there's two clips I want to kind of point out. So the first one is Archie Snyman taking a one-handed line out and popping it down to his scrum half. This is during the Leinster-Munster game. So Archie Snyman, also known as the Viking, South African lock. This guy is a monster. To catch that ball with one hand and to still have that control, because it was a perfect throw down to his scrum half.
I mean, he caught it like it was a tennis ball, and he just dumps it down. I mean, that skill is incredible.
That's skill and confidence.
He's a Viking.
Now, what also made it quite interesting is that Archie Snyman also, this was his first game, by the way, for Leinster, and his old team was Munster. So there's a bit of a getting back at his old foe or old teammates, and then actually ended up scoring a brilliant try as well to seal the deal for a bit of a double whammy. I'm sure the Munster fans did not enjoy this one.
I I mean, you don't want to meet Achis Snyman in a dark alley.
Unless you're friends, definitely not. And then the second clip we're going to have a look at now, we're actually going to move now to the Premiership. That's the English competition. So during the game between Gloucester and Bath, we saw George Barton kicking his goal to the post. Now, what makes it quite interesting is that the rule states that as soon as you make your run up towards the ball to kick, if the ball falls, you cannot reset. You're already in motion of the kick. So you have your position already running up because they need to now come from the goal line coming up. And you need to make the best of it. Now, he definitely did because he picked up the ball and started the most perfect drop goal to still add 3 points to the goal.
So that the rule is that if you've started your run up,
Yeah.
you can't stop and reset.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, what a drop kick.
Yeah, because think about it, same thing happened in the World Cup, right? So very famous Jason Colbury rundown on the French kicker at that point. Same thing happened. As soon as he starts to run up, your team can come up, but the ball's in play technically. And Colbury in that case charged down the kick and possibly even won the World Cup for South Africa. 100%. So that's fantastic.
100%.
Right?
But how about that drop kick from this guy? I mean, he picks it up,
that's staying calm under pressure.
Straight in, fades it right through.
Fantastic.
Unbelievable.
And then last on our list to do is our try of the week. So we have, we're going to go to have a look at Ambrose Papier, scrum half for the Bulls. Okay. So firstly, we see that the Bulls take the line out against the throw.
Yep.
Pops it down, and Papier just saw a gap running through, beating 5, possibly 6 defenders to go score a try.
Yeah.
This is probably the best individual try you're going to see all season. So fantastic from his part. What I did enjoy was because I was watching the commentary, the British commentary. So Papier sounds very fancy, as pronounced as Papier. so Papier is having a fantastic time currently in Wales, and will continue his time with the Bulls for the upcoming game this weekend.
A fantastic individual try. You like to see that.
Right, Peter. That was a fantastic weekend we had of rugby already. You can really see that URC really gaining some momentum. Some teams are definitely peaking, and two of the South African
It will be
teams are up there.
interesting on the whole Sari issue. I think that story still got some legs in it.
Absolutely,
to
and
see what happens, because they go to that vote. So it's all about that vote.
It's going to be absolutely so quite crucial.
See where things are at.
Absolutely, and then new developments, and I think it's quite nice to keep things fresh. Like I said, there might be some people opposing the tour. I'm personally all for it. I can't wait to see that in action. And then, it's always things happening. It's always never quiet time in the rugby world.
Indeed.
So, Peter, thank you very much
Thanks,
for your
Scott.
time. Much appreciated. So, Scrumdown is broadcast live on Free Vision Plays Sports 1 channel. So, be sure to have a look. You'll see the details down below on the screen. And if you like this content, you would like to see more of it, please do subscribe for the content. Thank you very much.